Welcome to Counselor Chats, the show where we explore the front lines of mental health innovation to help the traditionally unreachable and the people who turn adversity into action. Today, we're digging into a topic that's become a buzzword for many. It's a battle tested way of life: resilience, strength through adversity. We often celebrate resilience as the ability to bounce back, to stand tall after being knocked down. And there's no denying its power. Resilient people can adapt, grow, and even thrive after facing a hardship. But resilience isn't all roses. There's a flip side we don't talk often enough about: the emotional toll, the expectation to be strong all the time, and the danger of normalizing suffering as something that we're just supposed to endure quietly. So today we're asking, what does it really mean to be resilient? What does it cost, and was it worth it? Each of our panelists today brings a story, one shaped by different backgrounds, barriers, and breakthroughs. And together we'll uncover the truth about resilience from the people who have lived it. Today's panel is, we're kicking it off with Casie Fariello, co-founder of Other Parents Like Me, a national platform supporting parents of children facing mental health challenges. After a 26-year career in the airline industry and her own journey raising 3 children through mental health struggles, Casie launched OPLM to provide community, education, and daily support for families. She is a trained group leader in the Invitation to Change model, a peer recovery specialist, and is completing her craft certification. Casie also volunteers with the Partnership to End Addiction and is dedicated to helping parents find connection, resilience, and hope through compassionate support. Welcome, Casie. Our next panelist, Matt Torres, has an extensive career in sports, having competed at high levels throughout his life, including 2 times Paralympic appearances for Team USA in 2021 and 2024. Of Colombian and Puerto Rican descent, Matt proudly embraces his rich cultural heritage, which has shaped his values and approach to life. He is currently a wheelchair basketball player for the Connecticut Spokebenders, demonstrating both his physical strength and determination. He is a dedicated real estate agent at Century 21 Scala Group with a deep commitment to his community. Known for his strong work ethic and personable approach, he has built a reputation for providing exceptional service to clients. Outside of his career, Matt is actively involved in community outreach with both the Knights of Columbus and the Ausonia Lions Club, and strives to inspire others with his resilience and dedication to making a positive impact wherever he goes. Joe Keiser is an accomplished educational leader with over 2 decades of experience in middle school administration, curriculum development, and student-centered programming. He currently serves as the principal of Franklin Avenue Middle School in Franklin Lakes, New Jersey, where he has led a thriving community of students and staff since 2011. Under his leadership, the school was recognized as a 2024 New Jersey School to Watch and gained national acclaim for its award-winning Living Lessons program promoting compassion and acceptance, which he developed with a colleague in 2005. Through stories of extraordinary courage and resilience, the Living Lessons program has been empowering and inspiring the next generation for 20 years. Joe's contributions have earned him numerous honors, including Promising Practice Awards from the Character Education Partnership, the Change Champions Award from Direct Change, and the New Jersey Bias Officers Association Education Award. He has also served as a mentor for the New Jersey Leaders to Leaders program, guiding new administrators through leadership development. And last but not least is Diamond Marie Thaxton, a counselor, and licensed mental health counselor and certified substance abuse counselor in New York State and a board-certified human service professional. She graduated from Syracuse University as a biophysics major and Medill College for graduate and doctoral level mental health counseling. She is currently in private practice as a psychotherapist. Diamond is completing additional doctorate studies in public administration at Valdosta State with a concentration in nonprofit operations and public policy. She is also completing her doctorate in psychology at Southern California University, specializing in positive psychology. Diamond considers herself a peak performance therapist. She believes that every person can be a high performer if they choose to resolve their trauma, increase their resiliency, and understand their personality. Welcome all. So let's jump right in. I'm going to open up the question for whoever wants to answer first, and then we'll just have a flowing conversation. So the first question is, Can you share a moment in your life when you realized resilience wasn't an option and that it was necessary?
Oh my gosh, I've had so many moments of resilience not being an option. I'm only allowed to pick one, Michael. Okay. All right, let's see. I did not, my son was in 2018 in and out of treatment centers, struggling with substance use, running away, holes in the wall, um, uh, like flipping tables. My husband had to intervene between the two of us because I was trying to hold a boundary and take his phone, and it became a physical altercation. And my husband had to come in, and we were basically in a prison. My husband couldn't even go to work, and I felt like all I was doing was trying to keep everything sane and still support my daughter in college and support my younger son in school. And on their own journeys. And my son then overdosed on my oldest daughter's medication because she has severe anxiety. She was coming home for school from college, and I had to go buy it. And my son changed it with Aleve in like 30 seconds. Literally put it down and ran upstairs. And he lost 5 days of his life. He is alive, but he had to be transferred immediately from um, our local hospital because his blood pressure dropped to 10 in a couple hours, and taken to a larger hospital in New Jersey. And At that particular moment was when all the stress that I had been having, I was like, I had to put it all down. I had to be resilient. I had to move forward because the school district was done. They had told us he can't come back right before that. So all these things happened. These three things happened before he tried to take his life. The school system was done. Insurance had kicked him out of the last program, and social services just wanted to put him in a boys' home. And I knew as a parent in that moment that my son was still wanted by me. So what can I do to make sure he stays alive? And We did a GoFundMe. So I became a very resilient person. I raised $70,000 to send my son to private pay programs. And he said today he wouldn't be alive without it. So resilience was, oh, and vulnerability, because you had to share. In order to get that, you had to be very vulnerable and share everything. And I don't know about any of you guys, Matt and Diamond, but because it was so public, oh, just going to the grocery store, people would say, "Oh my gosh, you're so amazing. What a great mother you are. You're so powerful." I'm just like, I don't feel any of those things.
Yeah, there's so much that you brought up there, right? From a healthcare system and an educational system that creates additional stressors for a family, for your son in the direct sense, but then also the impact for you and your family. And where does he go? How does he get the help that he needs? What happens when there's no support in the healthcare system for him? And then um, and you didn't ask for any of this, right? And I think that's probably going to be one of the themes that we talk about today, is that when we talk about resilience, there are people who choose to go into difficult situations and know that it's going to be difficult before they enter into it. And then there's the other group of people, which is probably the majority in this world, which is that you deal with the cards that you're dealt, and you can either choose to persevere and make your way through it, um, and come out on the other side stronger and adapt. But it's going to be difficult when you go through it. And so, Diamond, I wonder if you can share a little bit from the counseling side of what does that look like for somebody, and what are the tools and resources that are available for them.
Sure. So I specialize in addictions, and story really resonated with me because this is what I see day in and day out. And it's very true. There is no linear path to wellness or getting better when it comes to addictions. What works for one person may or may not work for the next person. So it's sad that it's still like the private pay. Unfortunately, we're still in America. It's corporate. You get what you pay for. Um, and it's such a struggle. And a lot of the things as far as, the resources, they are out there, but again, it's really, you really have to try everything because you don't know what's going to work. So I would say from a therapeutic perspective, that's exactly what it is. Sometimes you will exhaust all resources. Not only does the person that's experiencing addictions hits rock bottom, but the families and people around them also hit rock bottom. So it's just very important. And then I would also say the other resources that those who are also supporting the person that is struggling with addiction to be sure that they are getting all the help and resources that they need for themselves, because that's so true. You cannot pour from an empty cup. It's impossible. No one can do it. I don't know anyone that has done it, so that's my therapeutic perspective on it.
Yeah, and to the point that you picked up on around resources, there's resources. The lack of resources are in multiple different areas, right? One, to your point, in the educational system. Two, in the healthcare system, and we talk about this frequently on Counselor Chats. If you want to see a psychiatrist, a psychologist, on average, it takes 6 to 9 months to get an appointment. And if you can find somebody sooner, you're going to be paying out of pocket private pay because the demand is so high. There's an estimated 30 to 35,000 person shortage based off of the demand that's out there for mental health support, that more and more practitioners don't have to take insurance anymore to get their client base. And so it becomes incredibly expensive, as you know, Casie, from the GoFundMe and the fundraising that you've done and persevered through to be able to provide the resources for your son that he needed. But the U.S. healthcare system is creating this gap where we want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to get the care that they need, and in the way that they want it, right? And so, this may or may not be true for your son, but it is for so many in high school and middle school. But while there are resources available at the schools for them to talk to, they're not necessarily in the way and the mechanism and the availability of where, when, and how they want to talk to somebody. And so, for all of us, it's identifying the fact that resilience when it comes to mental health is us recognizing that, there aren't enough resources today in the traditional sense for people to get the help and resources that they need in a timely manner. And so that's why there are these great innovative solutions for getting people access like they can in Counselor. Um, Matt, I wonder if you would tell us a little bit of a story for, what did resilience look like for you growing up?
Yeah, yeah, sure. So, I would say my biggest point of contention in terms of resiliency was actually maybe about a year or so ago. So just a little bit of context. I'm a retired Paralympic swimmer for Team USA. Um, just uh trying to get right to the point. In 2013, no, 2023, summer 2023, right before World Championships, I sustained a chest injury, literally like 3 days before um World Championships, and it really messed me up mentally. I tend to have anxiety when it comes to medical issues and illnesses and whatnot. So I just had an episode where my mind immediately assumed worst case scenario, that I was having a heart attack, that I was having heart issues and whatnot, and it ruined my confidence. Like I went from 100 to zero in seconds. Um, Long story short, I was making my recovery. Thankfully, there was no major issue. I got checked out. I was okay in the end. Um, but there was a recovery period, both physically from what did occur, and then mentally trying to recover that confidence. Um, so yeah, got back on the road for recovery. We had the Paris Games coming up summer 2024. Um, Around the winter, early springtime, I was working on the recovery slowly, uh, getting back to where I was as a swimmer. And within the national team, we have these different tiers. I going through 2023, I was on the national A team, which does come with a little bit of higher pay, among other benefits. And then, but turning into 2024, following my injury, the U.S. team decided to drop me down to national B. And even though I had, prior to my injury, shown all of the qualities and met all of the qualification to retain my national A status, um, so it became a point of contention um, for 2024. And long story short, they ended up holding me back on national B, and it was a big impact. Um, they had the means to retain me at national A. But that and just a number of other situations going on with the team, it really just impacted my mentality. Um, like I said, I was going through a really hard time with a number of situations, not just the injury. And when they opted to, not retain me on National A, I was like, I wanted to give up. I wanted to quit swimming right on the spot. And this was right before Paralympic trials, maybe 2, 3 months before. I come back and meet with my coach here in Connecticut, and I'm talking to her, and I'm like, this is hard, coming back from the injury, and I feel like I've lost the support from the national team administration. I don't know if I want to keep going. And she told me, you're right there. You're so close to the finish line. The games are just a few months away. And it was just resiliency. I don't know what really snapped in me, but I was like, all right, I'm just gonna finish this out. And yeah, 2 months later, show up to trials, qualified for the Paris Paralympic Games. Um, kept going, kept pushing the injury recovery. Fast forward to Paris. I got fourth in the 400-meter freestyle, and then a bronze medal in the 4x100 relay. Um, 2 weeks after that, I participated in open water world championships, and I won gold in a 3 kilometer race. So, and none of that would have happened, if I had just decided to give up and just say, you know what, it's not even worth it. But at the same time, it's like what you were saying, Michael, like we're taught you gotta keep going and pushing. But I feel like at the same time, you gotta know when enough is enough. There's a line to be drawn in the sand somewhere. So it really does go both ways. You've got to show a lot of grit, determination, and resiliency. Um, but ultimately, yeah, just with the way things were handled, I will admit that following the summer competitions, I decided to retire. Um, but so yeah, there's definitely multiple ways and angles you could look at it. But to go from absolute rock bottom in the athletic world to medaling at the Paralympic Games within a time of like 9 months, 10 months. Like, um, that's a lot to go through, and I'm grateful I was able to go ahead and have that experience.
It's um it's incredibly meaningful. Congratulations on the comeback. You know, I it's what stands out. There's a lot in your story, but having people in your life that you can rely on, that can talk to, that you can talk to, that can give you that nudge or that push when you need it in the right direction, right? When they know you well enough, right? Your coach in Connecticut, I'm assuming, knew you well enough to know that this wasn't your moment to stop, right? That you had more in you, and that you can persevere through the training that was required, and that not only were you going to come back and be in the position that you were prior, but you were going to prevail in a way where you're going to show them, right? You know, the national team B was, was the motivation that in theory you needed in order to get the outcome that you ultimately got with the gold medal. So So I think it's important to talk about the people in our lives that that can support us when we're down, and continue to support us when we're thriving. And maybe, to your point about knowing when it's time to back off, they're the people that can tell you, like, it might be time for a break. But what is it about our culture that that we celebrate? And if you watch just about every movie, right, on in the movie theater or wherever you watch your movies, there aren't very big movies that have like this big loss at the end of it that everybody celebrates, right? Or you go and you watch the Avengers, and it's kind of like, it's really hard to beat this guy Thanos, and so we're just not going to do it anymore, right? You don't see that in the movie. Like, that's not what's celebrated. What's celebrated is, like Rocky, he gets knocked down, and it doesn't matter how many times, he's going to get back up, and he's going to fight back, and ultimately prevail. And so, that's what we all celebrate around us. But that doesn't mean that it's not difficult at times, and that that winning isn't always going to be the outcome that people are going to experience. Sometimes there are going to be difficult things that people go through with the outcome that we don't all want. But that's not you can't say that's not being resilient also, right? Going through the difficult things that didn't come back with the outcome that you expected is resiliency as well. And so congratulations to you, Matt, for what you went through, and how you ultimately became the champion that you are. But that's not always the case. And Diamond, maybe there are some examples you have, blinded from some of the people that you've interacted with, where things didn't work out the way that they wanted. What are some of the ways that you've seen resiliency?
Yeah, that's such a great concept because one of the things where, like you said, with society, I ask my clients all the time, how do you define success? And then they'll be like, well, Bezos yacht, or and I'm like, okay, all right. Who's where are you getting this from? Is this external? Is this intrinsic? Like, where is it coming from? So that's usually the first thing of what I'm trying to figure out. Success looks different for everyone, right? That's the whole experience of life, the autonomy. You can give your life purpose and meaning. So that's one of the big ones. So what can also happen is when there is a loss or a, a trial or tribulation and the person needs to pivot, I always give the example of Slack. Slack was not intended to be a messaging service. It was something that, a company was using for, I think they were doing gaming, and it flopped. It sucked. And they had to pivot, and they were like, "Oh, wait, we got this. Like, people will use this COVID. Like, let's do this, right?" So that is not, I'm pretty sure the person really went in and was like, man, we're gonna do games. This is our thing, right? I'm pretty sure they went through feeling like they lost themselves, feeling like they lost a piece of their identity, right? Because how many times is like our career, the people we love, being a mother, being an athlete, that's taken away from you. You go into an identity, existential crisis of why am I here and what am I doing? So we have to work through that. And the biggest thing is like knowing that it's okay to pivot, right? Like validating and assessing your situation, and it's hard to do, but I have my clients do it objectively. Look at this objectively, as if you were creating a strategic plan for a business. How are you creating a strategic plan for your personal life? So we can look at this, see what the resources are, and move from there. So that's kind of how I work with that.
That's phenomenal advice. There's many people that are in many situations, but understanding, what does success look like to them? None of us, nobody is promised an easy life, right? And even the people that you see on social media that are, kind of flaunting the extravagance that people perceive to be, this lavish, easy lifestyle is not easy, right? There's a lot of challenges that go into every stage of life for every single person. And so understanding and being able to visualize what success looks like for you and helping people attain that is an incredibly powerful approach, Diamond. So thank you for sharing that. Joe, we're just talking about resilience. And so thank you for joining. You have a unique perspective as a middle school principal. Can you share an example of a time where you had to deal with a situation that was that caused you to be resilient, that caused, you know, some amount of growth, either as an educator or even at some other point in life that's informed the way that you've led the school?
Sure. I mean, all growing up through as an elementary into middle school into a high school person, I think my life was tested to show that resiliency. Um, my family was a divorced family from very young. So we split and, went in our different ways. I learned how to be resilient as an athlete, and being there and being cut by certain teams when I was younger, and then having to, come back again that next year and do all those different things. And so it was a natural progression as I played through high school and then through college, and then wanted to be a coach or wanted to be an educator and get into that field. You carry those lessons that you've learned from your previous life, so to speak, into what you're doing now. And then, very easy right up front, you became an educator, became a coach. Maybe things don't go as smoothly as possible, but again, reach back to those toolbox that you had before and continue to know that, hey, tomorrow could be a better day. And tomorrow you need to make tomorrow a better day. And not to get kind of lost in the sauce, so to speak, or to really get tied up into those failures or those bumps in the road that you have, so that every day is going to be a different day. And you have to come in with that new attitude every single day, especially as an educator, and that the kids are in front of you, or you're dealing with a parent in a certain situation. You really want to do the best that you can not to bring any negative attitude with you. So starting every day as a new day, starting every day with a fresh slate for that child that you're dealing with right in front of you. Whether or not they maybe were not the nicest to you in a previous conversation, you want to make sure that you're being your best self, and you're showing that child that, hey, even though we may have had that bumps in the road, we can still get over this together. We can still do this together. And you show your support to one another, and you have that mutual respect towards one another, which makes it easy to then keep going back and keep giving it your whole self day in and day out.
And that's perfect. And one of the things that you talked about were the lessons that you bring forward. And can you tell us a little bit about the Living Lessons program that you've developed, and the type of people that you bring to share their stories?
Sure. So this was a program that I started back in 2005 as a teacher with another colleague of mine. And we thought basically that parents were doing what they thought was right and protecting their children as much as possible. But what happened was you were starting to see these kids that were living in a bubble a little too much. And what they were thinking to see as the worst day of their life was that, hey, maybe their friend got mad at them. Maybe their dog was sick, or maybe they got their phone taken away. And the comments were, oh, my life is over. Oh, this is miserable. So we wanted to give students and the children an opportunity, especially in the middle school, an opportunity to see people who had been through bigger obstacles maybe than they had, or maybe those smaller ones that they're talking about, and show that, hey, there's an opportunity for you to see this person right in front of you that maybe survived the Holocaust, maybe was involved in 9/11, maybe had overcome a disability from a young age, or maybe possibly their entire life. And so we went out and really searched for speakers that were going to be able to come back and really speak to that idea of either diversity, resiliency, overcoming challenges, and really make that idea of mutual respect towards one another, right? And know that you're not only living this life for yourself, but sometimes you're living it for someone else. And even that one piece of kindness that you show somebody is going to go a long way. So we continue to go, and I've been doing this, like I said, since 2005, and I'll do it again next year in 2026. And so it's evolved over time, and we continue to bring in different kinds of speakers. So what is relevant today? What is the topic or current trend that we're seeing today that maybe some of our students are struggling with? Maybe that social media piece that we're there. Maybe it's body image. So trying to find speakers or people that can speak to all different kinds of students and even speak to adults, because we do invite volunteers. And so the adults come in and they're getting a different perspective than maybe the kids are getting, but then they're going home with their children and having those conversations, those really powerful conversations of what it means to continue to thrive in today's society.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. What are some of the I was going to say effects. What are some of the impacts that you've seen or the results that you've seen in the students and faculty from before the presentations and the sessions take place to, to afterwards? Do you see that difference in perspective around, as you said before, my friend is mad at me that the world is over, versus, wow, maybe now I see that, this wasn't as big of a deal as I thought it was?
I would love to tell you I see an immediate impact, because that's what we're always looking for, instant gratification. But just as we tell the kids, this world is not about instant gratification, right? There'll be times where maybe down the road, as they go to high school, they'll come back and they'll say, I was going through this and I remember this speaker that talked to me, spoke to me, and they really taught me something. They taught a lesson and I didn't think about it then, but when it came up later in my life, it really struck a chord with me. And I think about them when I do this. There's a speaker that we have that talks about texting and driving or cell phone use. And a lot of them come back when they're starting to get their permits or they're starting to get their licenses. They remember and they recall what that person says. And of course, there's the opportunities right away where they will come up. They'll try to start some type of charity or community service event. So those things happen pretty regularly. But it's that idea that this is a lasting impact on our students that come through that really makes it important for me. So, down the road when they're 16, 17, 18, they're still thinking about it, shows me that it made an impact to them right away. But it's that lasting impact that is truly the something that we go for.
Yeah, and you've been doing it so long that it's very possible that it's harder to measure the amount of reduced stressful events that are taking place, because you do it so consistently that everybody gets the opportunity early on to see the stories, to hear the different ways that people have become resilient and they have adapted it into just who they are.
Right. And I do it every other year. So like my sixth graders last year will see it again in eighth grade. And you'll even see some of them so excited about coming in that second year and being able to see it again. Or I'll see some of those students that want to come back and ask their parents, can you volunteer so I can come with you? It's those experiences that you're making a lasting impact on them. And it just is, it really is a special program, and it's special for a lot of people. And one of the greatest things, and this is when we first started, is we had this one eighth grade kid who was probably one of the tougher kids and would give other kids a hard time. And to see him with tears in the back of his in the back of the classroom as he comes out and he tells us and they write letters afterwards, and his response was, thank you for doing this to me, thank you for giving this to us. I realized maybe I wasn't being such a nice kid and wasn't giving kids the right amount of experience, and I need to start to reflect on that. And that's all because of one person who came from Columbine and expressed how they felt about the kids who came in to shoot up the school. And it's just, and what his sister had done to push forward that idea of kindness. And, so you never know where it's going to pop off or what kid is going to connect with a certain person. We've had 6th, 7th, 8th graders connect with 80, 90-year-old Holocaust survivors and connect really well. So you never know what they're gonna grab onto.
Well, it sounds like a phenomenal program. As you say that, it reminds me of a friend and colleague that I used to work with, whose parents were in the Holocaust, and his mom's stories in the National Archives and the Smithsonian and a whole bunch of places. But what I remember him telling me, and we've known each other for a bunch of years, but when my daughters were around 10 and 12 years old, he said, I don't know why we were talking about it, but he said, at the same age that your daughters are, both my parents got put on a train by themselves without, there was lots of people, but without a parent, without a guardian, just they were loaded onto a train and, sent away. And somehow they found their way across Europe and then ultimately to the United States with no parental supervision or guidance. And when you talk about what the children today that you lead every single day in the middle school, that's their age, right? Imagine, any one of them today being put on a train and told to go figure out life.
Right. And we talk a lot too about, kids from Africa, who were just given guns and, hey, go ahead, you're fighting in this war, or you're going to walk across, Africa to find freedom. And it's really those stories, unfortunately, repeat themselves a lot. They talk about history repeating themselves a lot. So making sure that you're telling the stories of the peoples who have survived, who have died, unfortunately, but making sure that their stories are told so people don't make the same mistakes moving forward. And one of our older speakers, her name was Clara Kramer. She was a Holocaust survivor. She would come, and every year she would thank us for hosting the event, right? We're thanking them for telling these stories to our kids. And she would always come back and say, thank you for letting us do this, because her uncle, when he was in the Holocaust and, on the shooting line, would and he said it in a foreign language, but it was tell them. And it was pushing her and the other younger people, the other younger generation, to tell their story of what happened, so that their memories and their stories and their history doesn't get lost, and maybe this won't happen again.
Yeah, and we're at a crucial point now with that specific situation where there's not too many Holocaust survivors left, and there's less people to tell the story, and they're saying that the current generation that's coming up is much more desensitized to it than previous generations, because they don't have that personal connection that your students have been so lucky to have.
Agreed. And again, we don't just have the Holocaust. We've had Rwandan genocide survivors. We've had Cambodian. The Armenian. We've had so many different people who have been through the struggles and different worldly events. And we've had positive stories too. It's not always doom and gloom. You want the positive events where, in 9/11, you have people who opened their homes, opened their country to accept all these people and make sure that they felt like, hey, they were having a normal day during such a tragic time in our country. So there's those positive stories that are out there too.
And whether it's positive or more challenging situation, it's all resilience, right? It's a situation that somebody may not have anticipated ever living through in their life, ever been trained for, and managing through it in a way that ultimately, made them a different person on the other side. And it's that story about that growth that is valuable for everybody to understand. But there's another side of it too, right? Which is that depending on the significance of the thing that somebody went through, sometimes it creates calluses, right? It creates this desensitization for the person who went through it to care less about the little things that matter to others. And so does that come through in the programs at all also?
Yeah, it's not about, we talk a lot about having tough skin, right? That building a resiliency, they used to tell us when we were younger, oh, just, deal with the tough skin, push it down, whatever. That's not something that we're promoting, but we do want them to build that toolbox or build the ways to support others when they see someone going through it. That idea of empathy, right? That people or someone's going through something, let's make sure we're there to support them. So it's not that you're desensitizing yourself to something that's happening. It's you're desensitizing yourself from looking away and just thinking it's okay. It's building that sense of empathy. It's building that sense of community. That yes, it takes a village to raise people, but it also takes a community to raise ourselves and become that citizen, or that person, that true companionship that we all probably are missing a little bit, and trying to get them, off of their phones or also off social media for the negative portions of it. But then do the things that are really great. You hear so many times like, oh, Facebook's so great. I've reconnected with this person that I never thought I could, right? Take those positive pieces of things rather than the negative things of, oh, here's all the politics and all the negative things that are popping up on Facebook or on the other social media. I know I'm aging myself when I say Facebook, but, it's that, again, it's that sense of community and doing it together and building people up, not breaking them down. So again, not about desensitizing what happens to people, because it's important and you have to meet someone where they are at. But again, giving them those tools to be able to get through those hard times.
Along the lines of something that Matt said, maybe we could all talk about is who or what helped each of you build resilience? You talked a little bit about it, Casie, but I don't know if you want to dive a little bit deeper and share some more details around the person or the people.
I mean, I wouldn't be where I am without peers who I've gotten to know and who were willing to get in the suck with me and talk with me about their own suck, and know that it's you're not alone. That's why I was trying to wonder if Matt connected to other athletes who have been through that experience of losing what they had and having to crawl back to gain what they had. Because I think that's what we were talking about. Like as a parent, I was crawling back to what I thought we had, and it's not necessarily the same thing because now I created a business around this peer support stuff, but um, it's the failures have. I'm Diamond. You can talk about this. I think the failures have their own thing to help with the resilience. Like it's this. I can get back up even when I fail, and I'm crawling on the floor at that time is huge.
And having the right people to speak to, right? I think one of the things that you're alluding to, and I don't want to interpret your words, Casie, but there's a lot of people who avoid the difficult situations when people are going through them, right? Whether it's for fear of the unknown, or it's fear of saying the wrong thing, or just avoidance of kind of putting on their blinders and not wanting to acknowledge that difficult things are happening to people that they may care about, and that they don't know how to handle helping them through it. But I imagine in those situations, and from things that I've seen in life, people withdraw, and so it becomes a very lonely place. So finding someone to talk to becomes a really important um, aspect of resiliency, and finding the right people to talk to is also critical.
Diamond, can I ask you a question? Like, how do you advocate for your people who are there in that spot?
I would say definitely when it comes to addictions, I never operate in a silo. Depending on where I'm at, like everything has to be in place. We have to make sure that there's a medical team, there's a peer specialist, there's support groups. So when it comes to supporting and advocating, it's definitely, assembling that team. Um, when I worked in a clinic, and then it obviously everything was there. Now solo, when I work with people experience addictions because I'm outpatient and in private practice, I'm more working with people who are maintaining sobriety. But if relapses or return to use occurs, we always have a plan. Plans are always in place. So I would say that's pretty much how I make sure we support people. We make sure all avenues are covered. We don't get complacent ever.
So Matt, what I was trying to ask was, what kind of did you connect with other athletes who have gone through what you went through? You're not the only athlete who's here in this high up and then knocked down with an injury and having to crawl through. I know you had a lot of people supporting you, but was there support from people who've been where you were, or are you planning on maybe giving support to somebody else who in the future may be going through what you were? Because um, just the resilience of what you shared was really spoke to me.
Yeah, definitely. So it, it's a difficult situation because I know of other athletes that have sustained, like season-ending injuries or major medical setbacks. Typically typically in the past the US team has done a pretty solid job on the administrative end of supporting those athletes. So um that's why I feel like my case was really different, and it really took me aback just because I didn't feel like I got that support, whereas I know that other athletes did. Um and So it is definitely a little bit of a weird and a different situation. But in terms of giving support, I made sure, when I decided to leave the team, I reached out to the friends of mine and other teammates, and I said, even though I'm not going to be around anymore, if anything happens, like, just reach out to me at any point, and I'll be there in any way I can, because I know what it's like to be on the opposite side, and when I was going through this whole ordeal, like, about a year or so ago, last 12, 14 months ago or whatever, I felt very alone, other than, my family and my club coach. Um, but and it's not something that I would want someone else to go through. So I definitely make sure to try and mitigate the possibility of that happening to someone else.
Matt, can I ask you, when you felt alone, did you have resources available to talk to and you didn't use them, or were they not available to you, or just they weren't the type of resources that you felt comfortable with?
So I was connected with the psychologist to help with my recovery, and I actually still talk to the psychologist, so they were very helpful in that regard, and that was a connection that was made through the team. um I guess more so it specifically, how should I put it? Like on the pool deck and at the competitions, I guess I didn't feel that support so much within the national team. Um, but I did, I was able to pull from at least have a psychologist. So, outside of outside the pool and whatnot, I did have another pillar of support there.
That's great, and it's also great that you still talk to the support. Did do you think that dynamic takes place? Um, not maybe not having someone to talk to on the team because of the dynamic of competition.
Say there's definitely an extent to that. And then I my personal opinion is that there's a lot of cultural issues within the team. I don't know if it's just competition or um, sometimes I know it can come down to an individual person's morals and beliefs. Like if you're too solely focused on yourself and your own accomplishments, you're not really gonna care about what's going on around you and with your teammates, as long as if you've got this particular standard of success that you're holding yourself to, and you've only got your eye on that. um yeah, that, like, I think that is a factor that can play into things, and so when that kind of gets adapted to be the overarching team culture, it does make things a little bit harder.
Wow. Like, can I just say that it's okay that this is a parent culture, not just a team culture? Parents do the same thing, Matt, as what you happened in your team. My child having a struggle, all the parents like abandon you, and all they want to talk about is their child's graduation, their child getting into, an Ivy League school. And in that way, it really, I mean, I can so feel that loneliness, because I felt that loneliness of, why am I the only, why are they treating me as if I'm going to say a leper, because or whatever, for you, what that would be. But because you, they can now like show themselves above you, is kind of what I feel happens. I don't know if that resonates for you or not, but that's, as I was listening to you, and that aloneness, I so resonated.
Do you think at the same time there's that um, isolation feeling? Um, do you think when people go through something difficult and they're that much more resilient for having gone through it, that there's a difference that happens in your perspective of what are hard things? And Casie, to your point about to the image you just kind of portrayed, that somebody in the community is looking down on you in some ways. Do you feel like that helps you prevail and kind of supersede that, so that with this in some ways a difficult badge of honor, but a badge of honor that says, look, I've been through this. You haven't. You don't understand. You can't possibly relate to it. Does any of that happen when you ultimately go through something difficult?
For me, I'm gonna Matt. I mean, it sounds like that's a good question for you too. For me, yes, absolutely. It helps with determination of yes, I'm going to be able to do this. Also, the finding other people like me was important, and it was important for me. It's important, like Matt, you were talking about that. Now that I was alone for so long, that I want to give back. That's why I created peer support groups, is I don't want other parents to feel like I felt. So I love that you were sharing that. So I would love to hear your perspective as well.
So I think for me, it's still relatively new for me, having happened like a year ago, and but I do think that in the long run it's gonna help. Like Casey said, with determination and knowing that, having overcome something like what we've been through previously, it's gonna help in the long run. And there's gonna be times in life in the future where things are gonna get hard again, because that's just the cycle of life. And we'll be able to look back and say, well, we've been through this already. There's no reason why we can't overcome this obstacle now. So it's almost as I guess your own personal resource for the future.
Yeah, and Diamond, I wonder if you have some insight into that also, where it's almost like people who go through difficult things, they get calloused in some way, where it gives them a new perspective. Where once you've achieved going through the difficult thing, the future things that would seemingly be incredibly difficult for others, you don't see it that way. Or if it is a very difficult challenge that's up ahead of you, because there's nothing that says we're only going to have one of them in our lives, right? That the next one, it doesn't affect you in the same way, because you know that you can get through what's already difficult, and because you've done it once before.
Right, 100%. And I usually use the analogy with people where they say like, oh, whatever doesn't uh kill you makes you stronger, right? It makes you, but then that starts to lean into, well, you need to be strong all the time. So I usually give people the analogy that resilience is like a palm tree, flexibility and adaptability. The experiences that you had before give you the, like what Matt said, the template that um, you know what to do. You're familiar with the pain, what you need to do, and overcoming it, and it makes you more flexible and adaptable. So that's kind of like how I like to use it, and we also use it in cognitive behavioral therapy, that there's evidence that you were successful before in the past. So therefore, the chances are you will be successful again. So that's the clinical perspective on it.
That's great. And I think when I think about people that have been through difficult things, they wind up in one of two buckets. One, and I think all of you on this call are in the first bucket, which is, I've been through something difficult. Now I want to help others achieve what I achieved. Or two, I've been through something really difficult. What you're dealing with is so insignificant. I can't believe you can't handle that. Right? What are your perspectives on each of those each of those viewpoints?
Matt, you want to go first on that one?
Yeah, sure. I think, well, that it's kind of hard to describe, because actually how I want to put things, but I feel like it really does come down to your own personal mentality and viewpoint. Um, it's like, in the first bucket, I think you've got to be, I guess, selfless and humble would be two words I would describe it. To be willing to share about your experiences and know that maybe those experiences can help other people. Um, but and then of course you've got you've got it on the flip side where you can also look at it um like you do have a different perspective and seeing something like, I don't know, let's just say for a random example, like if a kid gets like a C on a test and he starts saying that it's the end of the world, it's like, come on now. So it's like, so it does go, it goes both ways. I think it really does come down to each individual person's mentality, as I was saying at first, and I guess the goals that they have in mind and where they want to go in the future, and then that'll kind of help change their perspective and how they view things.
Right. Yeah, it's an important thing, right? To be able to adjust the viewpoint and empathize with somebody who's going through something maybe less significant from what you went through, but still incredibly significant to them at that moment, right? Because they haven't moved the bar yet to have experienced the thing maybe anywhere near as difficult as you have. But that doesn't mean it's not important or difficult for them in that moment.
Oh my, yeah, exactly, 100%. I mean, I have what I've shared about my middle child is one little tiny point to my story. There's a lot more in there, including my stuff from my own childhood, um, and I hesitate to share all of it, because people will discount themselves as if what they're going through is not important and not hard. And I liked your example of the person with the C. Maybe the first time they got a C, and now they get that C, they make it through the C, and then they're like, okay, I can get a C again, you know. And then they move through. Something else happens, like, okay, I can, I think that's what the lessons that are brought forward, is that it doesn't mean your struggle is not your struggle. Matt, I'm sure you've had people be like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you went through that," and like, you're so amazing. And I've gotten that too, and I'm like, yeah, but my kids are amazing, and this is amazing. I wouldn't have been here without, like, I'm listening to your story, and you're like, I wouldn't have been here without my parents, my family. I wouldn't have been here without, like, you had people, even though you also had very sucky behavior from some other people. So, you still had someone. And there's some people who don't even have someone.
Right. Right. That's an important point. Right. The point, the fact about being resilient and what's celebrated, as we were talking about before, is that there's been a triumph as part of getting through that resiliency. But that's not always the case, right? It's you know uh, not everybody will be here, right, through the end of their challenge. And as we talked about, there's different degrees of challenges. Matt, to your point, it's one end of the world situation for one person is a C, right? Maybe that C in their mind leads to not getting into the school that they want, or that won't lead to the job, whatever it is, right? Versus overcoming challenges of the people who choose to climb Mount Everest, right? Um, or do physically difficult things because they want to build that resiliency, and wear it like a badge of honor, as opposed to the difficult things that people don't anticipate coming up. Which leads me to another question that I have for everybody, which is that, do you think resiliency is something that can be taught, or is it only learned through hardship? And is it different if that hardship is chosen versus a matter of circumstance?
Well, I would say it's a combination. I think it's one of those real philosophical questions. Where is it nature versus nurture? We never know. There's just too many factors and variables. I would say in a perfect world, it's nice that when you're raising people, that's foundational values and principles of emotional regulation. What are your values? Decision making. It's great if we can put those into children so that way as they grow into adults, they have a coping mechanism base to deal with those things. Um, Increases the chances of protective factor so that way they can experience resilience when working through things. But then there's the other counter argument that, you don't know what you would do until it happens to you. And that's one of the things I tell my clients all the time. Like, I always reference Mike Tyson. He says, everyone has a plan till they get punched in the face. It's very true. And I feel like when it comes to, those things, it's like you can be prepared, you cannot be prepared. So I don't really have, it's one of those philosophical ones. So I always say it depends. It depends.
And what if you prepare and, the thing that happens is in a completely different category, right? You probably have gained some skills, as we talked about before, for being able to know that you can make it through difficult things, but it doesn't mean that you're an expert and have the competencies and capabilities specifically for the thing that you encounter, right?
Um, um, I think I think it's something that gets developed along the lines that Diamond was saying. It's something that you gotta learn and kind of grow into as a child for the most part. I do think it can be learned to a lesser extent and to a lesser degree. But for the most part, I think that it's something that it'll be like an innate quality that you'll develop throughout your childhood and your teenage years. Like I mean, I could use another example in my swimming career. When I first started out, um I was initially inspired by Michael Phelps watching him swim at the 2008 games, and I decided I wanted to be just like him one day. Um, a year or so later, I'm already swimming at like really small local competitions, but um, having a physical disability, I mean, I was coming in last because I was swimming and racing against full able-bodied kids, and um, I mean, I'm going based off of what my parents tell me, but I would get discouraged because I didn't want to be losing. Um, and so it took them reminding me, like, you're just racing against your own time, focus on developing your speed and whatnot, and eventually you'll make it out. So um, I just kept going at it and just tried focusing on what my parents would tell me and just let the days go by and keep training hard every day. Um, So yeah, that I think that was one way in which, I learned it, but I was also just kind of developing it naturally based off of what my parents were teaching me and just by going and showing up to practice every day and putting in the effort. Um, I guess fast forward a few years later, I was in my early teen years and my club did a really bad coaching hire swap, and I just couldn't stay with the same coach anymore. So I asked the coach who was in charge of the hire program, and I asked if I could swim up with the faster kids. Um, and he told me straight to my face, no, you're not capable of doing my practices. So I said, all right, walked out the door, never came back, and I joined a different club team, actually a higher ranked club team, and joined their faster kids and started doing their practices. And that just gave me like a full chip on my shoulder. And again, I was 11 or 12 at that time, and every day I just had this fire in me. And even even up until last year, I was still thinking about that coach, and I'm like, I really hope with every day, every time I go to practice, with all of the accomplishments of my career, every day I'm gonna go out there and prove you wrong. And so like that wasn't something I learned. That was just something that I naturally had in me. So when I heard the negativity of the coach, I basically just took it and ran with it. Um, so, but yeah, so I do think it can go both ways. I think it's something that's more naturally developed, but you can learn it to an extent as well.
I think you should take a photo of your gold medal with you and send a note, right? It's just send like an 8 by 10, say thank you, and then, with your autograph.
I was thinking the same thing. It's amazing how naysayers really help with resilience, isn't it?
Yeah. It's a motivating factor. Diamond can tell us why, but
Yeah, I mean, I think it's. Oh, did you want me to answer? I'm sorry.
no, yeah, go for it. If you have the answer, please share it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I have two answers. Of course, it drives you. Wanna. It's the social pressure, right? It's the social psychology of you are being told that you don't belong, and therefore it initiates that internal evolutionary mechanism to prove to belong, which is great, right? It works. If it works, use it. Use it. But the counter to that is when I tell people is that if you do fail, now you can't sit there and be like, oh, those people were right. Oh, my enemies are winning type of thing, because now you're adding a whole different other level of pressure to yourself. So that's my 2 cents about it.
That's an important perspective. Um, so, as we're winding down on time, I have just one more question for each of you, if you don't mind sharing. But if you can go back to the hardest moment of your life and give yourself one message, what would that message be?
I get asked this question a lot, and I would actually go back to my childhood self, because there was a significant event that happened when I was 3. And I would say to that person, this is just another, you will find that there is going to be other challenges and other things, other people who don't treat you well, and other events that happen in your life that are going to feel really hard. And you can find the right people to surround you and support you, and understand your own intrinsic worth, and that will move you forward.
Yeah, so I'll think I'll stick back to my original story, with the injury and last year. Um, and just kind of reinforce the idea of resiliency basically. And I know it's a little bit cliche, but just find a way to keep going. Um, I think the biggest lesson that I took away is you've got to find a way to keep moving forward even when you think there isn't a path forward. Because you never know um what could be on the other side of that. Um, I know I mentioned it already, but I was really close to quitting. Um, like I even took a few days off of swim practice, and had I quit, I never would have gotten those last 2 medals in um last summer. And so, and at that point in time, I didn't think there was a way forward. Like I wanted it to be done. So yeah, ultimately it's just even when you like, yeah, I'll just repeat it. Even when you think there isn't a way forward, just try going a little bit, even if it's just a little bit longer and a little bit harder. Find a way forward.
I would say mine's is probably a combination of the two, that, you will find your people. There will be happy days, there will be better days, and then also that there is a solution. There's always a solution. Maybe not the solution you want, maybe not the one that you intended, but there's always one.
It's perfect. You know, there's so much power in going through what everybody has gone through here today and shared from all the perspectives. Thank you each for your time and for joining us today. There's a lot that we as a society can accomplish together, and the important part that I hope everybody takes away from all of the conversations here today is that you have support. Support is out there for you. And even when the days are dark and the times are tough, the people that are supporting you may not be right in front of you, but they are out there, and they might be a phone call, a text message, or a letter away, but they're out there. And so the number one thing that I think everybody can do in those dark days is find that person to talk to.